The painting of Queen Victoria had hung in Windsor Castle's East Gallery for over a century, watching generations of royalty pass beneath her stern gaze. I never expected it would be the death of me. But as I stand here in the darkness, listening to footsteps echo through the corridor, I realize that some secrets of the crown were never meant to be uncovered. My name is Roger Blackwood, and until 3 weeks ago, I was simply the senior caretaker of Windsor Castle's East Wing. Cataloging and preserving centuries of royal history had earned me the trust of the household. Now that trust might be my undoing. It began during the annual cleaning of the East Gallery. I'd performed this ritual countless times, carefully removing each painting, inspecting for damage and cleaning the ornate frames. But that day, something was different. As I lifted Victoria's portrait, a corner of the frame, in the hollow space, yellowed parchment peeked out, its edges crisp despite the decades of concealment. With trembling fingers, I extracted what appeared to be a map, drawn in faded ink on vellum. The paper felt alive beneath my touch, as though it held secrets eager to escape. Intricate lines traced what I recognized as the castle's original foundation, but with markings I'd never seen in any historical document. And there, in the corner, for the salvation of the crown when darkness threatens the light. I should have replaced it, should have pretended I never saw it. But 15 years of handling royal artifacts had taught me to recognize significance when I saw it. This wasn't just another historical curiosity. This was something else entirely. That night, I couldn't sleep. The map's mysterious markings danced behind my closed eyelids. I'd photographed it with my phone before carefully returning it to its hiding. Intricate lines traced what I recognized as the castle's original foundation, but with markings I'd never seen in any historical document. And there, in the corner, written in a hand I would later confirm belonged to Prince Albert himself. For the salvation of the crown when darkness threatens the light. I should have replaced it, should have pretended I never saw it. But 15 years of handling royal artifacts had taught me to recognize significance when I saw it. This wasn't just another historical curiosity. This was something else entirely. That night, I couldn't sleep. The map's mysterious markings danced behind my closed eyelids. I'd photographed it with my phone before carefully returning it to its hiding place. And now I sat in my modest flat, comparing the ancient drawings to modern blueprints of Windsor Castle. The differences were subtle but crucial. The map showed passages that didn't exist on any current plans, or rather, passages that weren't supposed to exist. One in particular caught my attention, a pathway leading from the east wing to what appeared to be a chamber beneath the round tower. The next morning, I arrived at work early, my mind racing with possibilities. The castle was quiet, most of the staff yet to arrive. I made my way to the East Wing, using my credentials to access areas tourists never see. The map had shown a specific panel in the oak-paneled corridor, marked with a small cross. I ran my fingers along the wooden walls, feeling for any irregularity. Nothing. I was about to give up when my hand caught on something, a slight protrusion, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. My heart pounded as I pressed it. A soft click echoed in the empty corridor. "Mr. Blackwood?" I nearly jumped out of my skin. Lady Margaret Holbrook, the Queen's private secretary, stood at the corridor's end, her expression unreadable. She'd always reminded me of a hawk, sharp-eyed and keenly observant. "Lady Holbrook, good morning. Just conducting the routine inspection." "At 6:30 in the morning?" Her voice carried a note of skepticism that made my skin crawl. "Best to get ahead of the day's tasks," I replied, forcing a smile. She studied me for a moment longer than comfortable. "Indeed, the Queen has requested some changes to the East Gallery's arrangement. We'll discuss it later today." As she walked away, her heels clicking on the marble floor, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Had she noticed the partially exposed panel? Did she know about the map? That afternoon, I noticed small changes. Security guards appeared in areas they didn't usually patrol. A conservation team arrived unannounced too, inspect the East Gallery, and Lady Holbrook seemed to materialize wherever I went, her hawk-like gaze following my movements. I needed to act quickly. Whatever secret the map held, others clearly knew about it. But why hide it behind Victoria's portrait? What was so important that Prince Albert himself had created a secret map? As I left work that evening, I made a decision that would change everything. I would return that night. The security systems were familiar to me. Part of my job involved coordinating with the security team during maintenance. I knew their patterns, their blind spots. What I didn't know then was that I wasn't the only one planning a nocturnal visit to Windsor Castle that night. Now, hiding in the shadows of the East Gallery, listening to approaching footsteps, I clutch the map in my pocket. The beam of a flashlight sweeps past my hiding place. The footsteps are deliberate, searching. They know someone is here. My phone vibrates. A text message. The screen's glow feels dangerous in the darkness, but I risk a glance. "You found it, didn't you? Meet me at the Round Tower. Come alone. Some secrets are worth dying for." The number is blocked. The footsteps are getting closer. I have seconds to decide. Retreat to safety and forget about the map, or dive deeper into whatever conspiracy I've stumbled upon. But then I remember Prince Albert's words. For the salvation of the crown, when darkness threatens the light, sometimes duty to the crown means breaking all the rules. I take a deep breath and step out of my hiding place, ready to face whatever waits in the darkness of Windsor Castle. After all, I'm no longer just a caretaker. I'm the keeper of a secret that could shake the very foundation of the British monarchy. And this is only the beginning. The Round Tower loomed before me like a dark sentinel against the star-studded sky. Every step across the moonlit courtyard felt like a betrayal of my years of loyal service. Yet here I was, creeping through the grounds I was meant to protect, the weight of Prince Albert's map burning in my pocket. The text message still glowed in my mind. Some secrets are worth dying for. Those words should have sent me running. Instead, they awakened something I'd buried long ago. Memories of my grandfather, who had also served as caretaker here, and the strange tales he used to whisper about the castle's true purpose. "Windsor isn't just a castle, Roger," he'd say, his eyes distant. "It's a fortress of secrets." I'd dismissed his stories as the ramblings of an old man. Now I wasn't so sure. The security cameras swept their usual patterns, but tonight, they seemed to move differently. More purposefully, I used my knowledge of their blind spots to approach the tower's base, where the ancient stones met modern concrete. According to the map, there should be an entrance here, hidden in plain sight. My fingers traced the weathered stonework, searching for any irregularity. The moon disappeared behind clouds, plunging me into darkness. That's when I felt it, a stone that moved slightly under pressure. Not much, just enough to trigger a mechanism that had waited patiently for decades. A section of the wall shifted inward with a sound like a dying breath. "I was beginning to think you wouldn't come." The voice froze me in place. From the shadows emerged Lady Helena Rothschild, but not as I'd ever seen her before. Gone were the elegant suits and careful manner. She wore dark clothing, practical and worn, with a leather satchel slung across her body. Her silver hair was pulled back severely, and her eyes held a hardness I'd never noticed in our daily encounters. "You sent the message," I said. It wasn't a question. "Your grandfather would be proud, Roger. He knew you'd be the one to find it eventually." My grandfather? The mention of him sent a chill down my spine. What do you know about my grandfather? More than you might think. William Blackwood wasn't just a caretaker. He was a guardian, like his father before him, and his father before that. Just as you were meant to be. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My grandfather's stories, his insistence that I follow in his footsteps at Windsor, his deathbed whispers about protecting the truth. They hadn't been the ramblings of a dying man after all. The map, Lady Helena continued, was never meant to lead to treasure, at least not the kind you're thinking of. What lies beneath Windsor Castle is far more valuable and far more dangerous than gold or jewels. A sound echoed from the courtyard, footsteps on gravel. Lady Helena's expression hardened. "We don't have much time. They're coming." "Who's coming?" "The ones who've been watching, waiting. They call themselves the keepers of the seal, but they're nothing more than vultures circling what they believe is rightfully theirs." She grabbed my arm. "Your grandfather died protecting the secret, Roger. Will you do the same?" The footsteps were getting closer. Lady Helena pulled me into the passage, pressing something cold and metallic into my hand. A key, ancient and elaborate. "If anything happens to me, find the chamber. Don't let them take it." Before I could respond, voices carried across the courtyard. I recognized one immediately, Lady Margaret Holbrook. "Search every corner. They must be here somewhere." Lady Helena pushed me deeper into the passage. "Go. I'll hold them off. Follow the map. But remember, the true path isn't always the one that's marked." The wall began to close behind me. The last thing I saw was Lady Helena stepping out to confront our pursuers, her posture straight and proud. Then darkness swallowed me whole. The passage was narrow and damp, the air thick with centuries of secrets. My phone's flashlight revealed worn steps leading down into the earth. The map showed a complex network of tunnels, but as I studied it more closely, I noticed something strange. Tiny dots punctuating certain intersections, too deliberate to be accidental. My grandfather's voice echoed in my memory. "Sometimes, Roger, the most important things are written in the spaces between the words." I'd always thought he was talking about reading between the lines in conversations. Now I wondered if he'd been preparing me for this moment all along. The key Lady Helena had given me was warm in my palm now, its surface etched with symbols that matched some of those on the map. Not waypoints, I realized, but warnings. Each marking told a story. If only I could understand the language. A distant sound made me freeze, voices carrying through the stone, distorted but growing closer. They were inside the tunnel network. But how? Unless there were other entrances. Unless this wasn't just about one secret, but many, all connected beneath the ancient foundations of Windsor Castle. I consulted the map again, this time looking not at the marked paths, but at the spaces between them. There, a pattern emerged. The dots weren't marking the way forward, they were showing which paths to avoid. My grandfather had been right about another thing. In the royal household, Roger, nothing is ever quite what it seems. Even the walls have eyes. As if to prove his point, I heard a click behind me. I spun around expecting to find pursuers, but instead found only smooth stone where rough wall had been moments before. The passage had sealed itself. There was no going back now. Whatever secret had cost my grandfather his life, whatever truth Lady Helena was willing to die protecting, lay somewhere ahead in the darkness. I took a deep breath and began to walk, each step taking me further from the world I knew and deeper into one I was only beginning to understand. The key felt heavier with each step, as if it knew the weight of its own importance. Somewhere above, the great clock of Windsor Castle struck midnight. Down here in the secret heart of the monarchy, time seemed to move differently. And I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't just following a map. I was following in my grandfather's footsteps, straight into the darkness he'd tried to warn me about. The real question was, would I survive long enough to understand why? The tunnels beneath Windsor Castle formed a maze of shadows and whispers. My flashlight beam caught something ahead, a symbol carved into the stone, identical to one of the markings on the map. But this was different. Fresh blood stained its edges. Someone had been here recently, someone who hadn't survived the experience. My training told me to turn back to alert security to follow protocol, but protocol hadn't prepared me for secret passages, ancient conspiracies, or the revelation that my grandfather had been more than just a simple caretaker. The blood was still wet, glistening in my flashlight's beam. Whoever had left it couldn't be far ahead. A distant echo of footsteps made me douse my light. In the sudden darkness, other senses sharpened. The air carried a metallic tang that hadn't been there before, and beneath it, something older, the smell of centuries of secrets. "Mr. Blackwood." Lady Margaret's voice carried through the tunnels, distorted but unmistakable. "We know you have the map. This can end one of two ways. Surrender it now, and your years of service will be remembered fondly. Continue this foolishness, and you'll share your grandfather's fate. My grandfather's fate. The official report had called it a heart attack. Natural causes. But I remembered finding him in the East Wing that morning, his fingers clutching a piece of paper that vanished before I could read it. His last words, a desperate whisper. The third seal must not break. A sound to my left, the scrape of stone on stone. I pressed myself against the wall just as a hidden panel slid open. Light spilled through, along with hushed voices. The chamber's been breached. A man's voice, cultured, aristocratic. If they reach it before us, they won't. Lady Margaret again. The Rothschild woman is being dealt with. Only Blackwood remains. I held my breath as their footsteps passed my hiding place. They carried no flashlights, moving through the darkness with practiced ease. These weren't just pursuers. They were inhabitants of this underground realm. Once their steps faded, I consulted the map again. The blood-marked symbol matched one of the dots I'd noticed earlier, one of the warnings. But warnings against what? The key Lady Helena had given me seemed to pulse in my pocket, as if responding to something in these depths. I pulled it out, studying its intricate patterns. In the dim light, the etchings appeared to shift and change, forming new configurations. That's when I noticed it. The key's design wasn't just decorative. It was a smaller version of the tunnel network itself, with one crucial difference. Where the map showed a solid wall, the key showed a passage. My grandfather's voice echoed in my memory. The true path isn't always the one that's marked. I backtracked to the last junction, where smooth stone met rough wall. The key felt warm in my hand as I ran my fingers along the surface, searching for... there. A depression so slight, it was nearly invisible. The key fit perfectly. The wall didn't just open, it dissolved, revealing a narrow passage that shouldn't exist. As I stepped through, the opening sealed behind me, leaving no trace of its existence. This tunnel was different. The walls were lined with metal, not stone, and strange symbols glowed with a faint phosphorescence. They looked ancient, but there was something almost technological about their precision. Ahead, the passage opened into a circular chamber. My flashlight revealed what looked like a study, preserved in time. A massive desk dominated the center, its surface covered with papers and leather-bound journals. The walls were lined with filing cabinets, each bearing the royal seal. But it was what stood on a pedestal in the corner that drew my attention. A box, about the size of a large book, made of what appeared to be solid gold. 3 seals, each more intricate than the last, held it shut. 2 of the seals were broken. Beautiful, isn't it? I spun around. Lady Helena stood in a doorway I hadn't noticed, blood trickling from a cut above her eye. She looked exhausted, but triumphant. Your grandfather died protecting the 3rd seal, she said, moving into the room. As did my father before him and countless others through the centuries. The keepers believe breaking it will give them power over the monarchy itself. They don't understand what they're dealing with. What's in the box? The truth. She ran her fingers along its surface. About the royal family. About what really maintains their power. About what's really buried beneath Windsor Castle. A crash echoed from the tunnel outside. Lady Helena's expression hardened. They're coming. Roger, listen carefully. The 3rd seal can only be broken by someone of the bloodline. Your bloodline. The Blackwoods weren't chosen as caretakers by accident. You're descendants of... The wall exploded inward. Through the dust and debris stepped Lady Margaret, flanked by men in dark suits. She held an antique pistol with practiced ease. That's quite enough family history for one day, she said. Mr. Blackwood, the box, if you please. Lady Helena moved with surprising speed, placing herself between me and the gun. He knows now, Margaret. You can't stop this. Can't I? Lady Margaret's smile was cold. Your father said something similar before he had his unfortunate accident. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Lady Helena's voice shook with rage. You killed him? The keepers of the seal have protected the monarchy's interests for centuries, by any means necessary. I saw Lady Helena's hand move toward her satchel, saw Lady Margaret's finger tighten on the trigger. Time seemed to slow. The box on the pedestal began to hum. All eyes turned to it as the third seal began to glow. I felt something stir in my blood, an ancient recognition. My grandfather's last words suddenly made sense. The third seal wasn't meant to be protected. It was meant to be broken. By me. As Lady Margaret's gun swung toward the box, I made my choice. Sometimes protecting the crown means revealing its darkest secrets. My hand reached for the seal as the first shot rang out. Time fractured into crystalline moments. The gunshot echoed through the chamber like a thunderclap. Lady Helena's body jerked, but she remained standing. Lady Margaret's expression shifted from triumph to confusion as the bullet hole in the wall behind us began to glow with the same ethereal light as the third seal. My hand was still on the box, and I could feel it pulsing like a living heart. The metal wasn't just warm now. It was singing, resonating with something in my blood that had laid dormant for generations. Impossible, Lady Margaret whispered. The protective wards were disbanded centuries ago. Lady Helena laughed, a sound of pure joy despite her wounds. You never understood, did you, Margaret? The wards weren't disbanded, they were inherited. Blood calls to blood. The men in dark suits raised their weapons, but Lady Margaret held up her hand. Wait. Her eyes narrowed as she studied me. How much do you actually know about your family's history, Mr. Blackwood? Before I could answer, the box beneath my fingers shuddered. The third seal began to crack, hairline fractures spreading across its surface like spider webs. Each crack released a thin stream of golden light. Roger, Lady Helena's voice was urgent. Your grandfather left something for you. The night he died, he entrusted me with... She reached into her satchel, producing a worn leather journal. You need to know the truth, about everything. Lady Margaret's gun swung toward the journal. That document is property of the Crown. The Crown? Lady Helena's laugh was bitter now. The Crown exists because of families like ours, Margaret. The Blackwoods, the Rothschilds, the true keepers of Windsor's secrets. I took the journal with my free hand, its leather cover warm and familiar. As I opened it, my grandfather's handwriting swam before my eyes. My dearest Roger, if you're reading this, then you've found what we've protected for generations. The box contains more than just secrets. It contains power, real power, the kind that built empires and toppled kingdoms, the kind that the first Windsor monarchs bound with blood and magic, sealed away beneath their castle, protected by chosen families whose loyalty was guaranteed by something stronger than mere oaths. The third seal was never meant to be permanent. It was meant to be broken when the truth needed to be known, when the corruption within the keepers of the seal threatened everything we'd sworn to protect. You are not just my grandson, Roger. You are the last of an unbroken line that traces back to the first guardians, to the time before the Windsors, when magic still flowed openly through the royal bloodlines. The journal's pages began to glow with the same light as the seal. Lady Margaret fired again, but the bullet dissolved into golden sparks before it could reach us. Enough of this nonsense, she snarled. The box, now. Tell him, Lady Helena urged. Tell him what really happened to William Blackwood. Tell him about all the guardians who died protecting this secret. The chamber's temperature plummeted. Frost began to form on the filing cabinets, and our breath came out in visible clouds. The box's humming grew louder, more insistent. Your grandfather was a fool, Lady Margaret spat. He discovered what the keepers had become, how we'd used our position, our access to the Crown's true power for our own gain. He threatened to expose everything, so we eliminated the threat. Rage boiled up inside me, hot and ancient. The third seal cracked further, and with it something inside me cracked too. Memories that weren't my own flooded my consciousness, centuries of Blackwoods, standing guard over Windsor's secrets, the true reason for the castle's construction. the power that the first Windsor monarchs had bound here, and the price of that binding. The seals, I said, understanding finally dawning. They're not just locks, they're chains. Lady Helena nodded. Chains that bound the old magic that belonged to the people, not the crown. Each seal broken weakens those chains and releases that power back to its rightful heirs. I finished. Lady Margaret's composure cracked. Kill them both, she ordered her men. The box must not. The third seal shattered. Golden light exploded through the chamber. The armed men were thrown backward, their weapons turning to dust in their hands. Lady Margaret screamed as ancient power, long contained, surged through the room. The box opened. Inside was not treasure, not documents, not weapons. Inside was pure light, pure power, pure truth. It poured into me like molten gold, filling spaces I never knew existed. Generations of memories of power, of purpose. Lady Helena's voice seemed to come from very far away. The keepers forgot the most important truth about power, Roger. True power isn't about control. It's about protection. That's why the Blackwoods were chosen. Not for their ability to keep secrets, but for their ability to know when those secrets needed to be revealed. Through the golden haze, I saw Lady Margaret backing away, her face a mask of terror. You don't understand what you've done. The monarchy will survive, Lady Helena interrupted. But it will be bound by new chains now. Chains of truth, not secrecy. The power settled into my bones, into my blood, feeling both foreign and familiar. I knew what I had to do next. The knowledge was there, passed down through generations of guardians waiting for this moment. The time of the keepers is over, I said, my voice resonating with power that wasn't entirely my own. A new age of guardianship begins. The chamber's walls began to shift, ancient mechanisms awakening. Hidden doors opened, revealing passages that led deeper into Windsor's foundations, to secrets even the keepers hadn't known existed. Lady Helena touched my arm. Your grandfather would be proud, but this is just the beginning. There are other boxes, other seals, other truths waiting to be revealed. The question is, are you ready for what comes next? I looked down at the empty box, at my grandfather's journal, at the golden light that still coursed through my veins. The power of truth, of revelation, of protection. The true legacy of the Blackwood line. Lead the way, I said. Behind us, Lady Margaret's voice rang out one last time. You'll regret this, Blackwood. Some secrets are meant to stay buried. But as we stepped through one of the newly revealed passages, leaving her and her men behind, I knew she was wrong. The time for buried secrets was over. The real question was what other truths lay waiting in Windsor's depths. The deeper passages beneath Windsor Castle thrummed with awakened power. Golden light flowed through ancient channels in the walls, illuminating a vast network of chambers that hadn't seen light in centuries. Each step we took revealed new wonders and new dangers. Lady Helena moved with purpose, despite her injuries. Your grandfather mapped these lower chambers, she said, consulting a weathered page from the journal. But he never reached the heart. The keepers always stopped him. The power flowing through my veins responded to each chamber we passed. Some doors opened at our approach while others sealed themselves shut. The castle itself seemed to be guiding us, recognizing the blood of its true guardians. There's something you need to understand, Roger, Lady Helena said as we descended another level. What we've unleashed, it's not just power, it's responsibility, the kind that has destroyed better men than us. I thought of Lady Margaret's words. Some secrets are meant to stay buried. What happened to the other guardians? The ones before my grandfather? Lady Helena's pause was heavy with unspoken tragedy. Power attracts corruption, Roger. The keepers weren't always what they became. They started as guardians too, protecting the balance between crown and magic. But power. She touched a wall, where golden light pulsed beneath her fingers. Power changes people. A distant explosion rocked the foundations. Dust rained from the ceiling. They're trying to collapse the tunnels, Lady Helena said grimly. They'd rather bury the truth than let it escape. We reached a circular chamber larger than the others. At its center stood a pedestal similar to the one that had held the box. But this one bore something different. A crown. Not the crown jewels I knew from my years of service, but something older, cruder, more powerful. The first crown, Lady Helena breathed. The one they never show in public. The source of it all. The crown was a simple band of dark metal, unmarked except for 3 spaces where gems should have been. As I approached, the golden light flowing through my veins reached out to it like a lodestone finding true north. Your grandfather discovered the truth about it, Lady Helena said. The modern monarchy's power doesn't come from divine right or political authority. It comes from this, from the old magic, bound and controlled through artifacts like this crown. Another explosion, closer this time. The chamber shuddered. The gems, I said, understanding dawning. They're the same material as the seals on the box. Lady Helena nodded. 3 seals, 3 gems. When the first Windsor monarchs took power, they bound the old magic into these objects. The crown controlled it, the gems focused it, and the box contained the truth of it all. And now the truth is free. But truth without purpose is just chaos. The crown needs its gems restored, but not to bind the power, to channel it, to restore the balance that was lost. The golden light within me surged, forming patterns in the air. The same patterns that had been etched on the key. They weren't just decorations or maps, they were instructions. The keepers have the gems, Lady Helena continued. They've used them for centuries to maintain their control. That's why they're so desperate to stop us. With the 3rd seal broken and the truth revealed, those gems are the only thing keeping them in power. A figure appeared in one of the doorways. Lady Margaret, her elegant clothes now dust-covered and torn, but her bearing still regal. She held something that glowed with a familiar golden light. Looking for these? She opened her hand to reveal 3 small gems, each pulsing with power. Margaret, Lady Helena warned, you don't understand what you're dealing with. No, Helena, you never understood. The old magic isn't meant to be free, it's meant to be controlled. That's what civilization is, control over chaos. The gems in her palm flared brighter. The golden light within me responded, reaching out, trying to pull the gems toward their rightful place in the crown. Your grandfather understood in the end, Lady Margaret said to me. Right before he died, he begged us to keep the seals intact. He saw what uncontrolled power could do. But something in her voice rang false. The memories that weren't mine, generations of Blackwood guardians, stirred in recognition. You're lying, I said. Show us the truth. Show us what really happened. The power in my blood surged outward, connecting with the gems. For a moment, the chamber filled with images, echoes of the past. My grandfather, standing in this very room, facing Lady Margaret. But he wasn't begging. He was warning. If you break the balance, his voice echoed through time. If you use these gems for your own power, everything we've protected will be destroyed. The vision showed what happened next. The struggle, the gems scattering across the floor. Lady Margaret's order, the fatal blow. The images faded, but their truth remained, hanging in the air like smoke. Lady Margaret's composure cracked. He gave us no choice. The power had to be controlled, had to be contained. No, Lady Helena said softly. It had to be protected. There's a difference. The gems in Lady Margaret's hand began to vibrate, pulling toward the crown with increasing force. She clutched them tighter, but the power was too strong. You don't understand what will happen, she gasped. The monarchy, the order we've maintained. We'll survive, I said, the words coming from somewhere deeper than memory. But it will be different. Better. True. The gems tore free from her grasp, shooting toward the crown. As they settled into their ancient settings, the chamber filled with blinding light. The crown rose into the air, suspended by streams of golden power. Lady Margaret screamed, not in pain, but in despair. "What have you done?" The crown slowly descended, coming to rest not on the pedestal but in my hands. Its metal was warm, alive with the same power that flowed through my veins. "The time of secrets is over," Lady Helena said. "The time of truth begins." But as the crown's power merged with the awakened magic in my blood, I realized this wasn't an ending. It was a beginning, and like all beginnings, it carried both promise and danger. The real question was, what would this new truth cost? The crown pulsed in my hands, each heartbeat of power sending ripples through the very foundations of Windsor Castle. I could feel the weight of centuries pressing down on me, the hopes, fears, and sacrifices of generations of guardians, all leading to this moment. Lady Margaret sank to her knees, her face a mask of defeat. "You have no idea what you've done," she whispered. "The chaos you've unleashed." But even as she spoke, I could sense the change spreading outward from the crown. The walls of the chamber shimmered, ancient enchantments awakening. Dust fell from long-hidden murals revealing scenes of a Britain I'd never known. A land where magic flowed as freely as rivers, where the line between the mundane and the mystical was gossamer thin. Lady Helena placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's time, Roger. The crown must be worn for the transformation to complete, but remember, with this power comes a choice, and choices have consequences." I hesitated, the weight of the decision heavy in my hands. "What will happen to the monarchy? To Britain?" "The truth will reshape everything," she replied. "But how it reshapes things? That depends on you." Another explosion rocked the chamber, closer than before. The keepers were still trying to bury their secrets. "Whatever you decide," Lady Helena urged, "it must be now." I closed my eyes, feeling the pulse of the crown sync with my own heartbeat. In that moment of connection, visions flashed through my mind. A Britain reawakened to magic, its people rediscovering abilities long forgotten. The monarchy transformed, no longer just figureheads, but true guardians of an ancient power. Chaos in the streets as people grappled with truths long hidden. Hope blooming in unexpected places as the old magic healed wounds, both physical and spiritual. And through it all, the steady presence of the guardians, no longer hidden but standing openly as protectors of the balance between the old world and the new. I opened my eyes. Decision made. "The truth isn't meant to be controlled," I said, looking at Lady Margaret. "But it isn't meant to be unleashed without guidance either." With a deep breath, I placed the crown on my head. The world exploded into light and sensation. Every stone in Windsor Castle sang with awakened power. I could feel the ley lines crisscrossing Britain pulsing with renewed energy. And I could sense the shock and wonder of millions as the veil between the magical and the mundane dissolved. Through the maelstrom of power, I heard Lady Helena's voice. "Remember who you are, Roger. Remember why the Blackwoods were chosen." Images of my ancestors flowed through me, not just caretakers but guardians, protecting the delicate balance between crown and magic, between power and responsibility. I saw my grandfather standing firm against corruption, choosing truth even at the cost of his life. As the power settled, I opened my eyes to a changed world. The chamber had transformed, its walls now transparent, offering a view of Windsor Castle and the land beyond. Magic shimmered in the air, visible to all for the first time in centuries. Lady Margaret stared in disbelief. "It's over," she murmured. "Everything we worked for." "Not over," I said, my voice resonating with new authority. "Transformed. The keepers forgot their true purpose. You were meant to guide, not control." I turned to Lady Helena. "And the guardians forgot that protection sometimes means revelation, not secrecy." "What happens now?" she asked. I could feel the weight of expectation from every corner of Britain. The world was watching, waiting to see what this new age would bring. "Now," I said, "we rebuild. We teach. We guide. The old magic is free, but freedom without wisdom is dangerous." I waved a hand, and the chamber's walls shimmered. Scenes from across the country appeared, people discovering magical abilities, ancient sites awakening, the natural world responding to the surge of power. But I also saw fear, confusion, and those who would seek to exploit the chaos. The monarchy will stand, I declared, but as guardians, not rulers. The truth of their power is known, and with it comes a new covenant with the people. Lady Helena nodded solemnly. And the keepers? I turned to Lady Margaret, who looked lost and afraid for the first time. Your order will be disbanded, I said, but your knowledge is valuable. Those who choose to embrace this new role, to serve as teachers and guides rather than controllers, will have a place in the new guardianship. And those who don't? She asked, a hint of her old defiance returning. Will face justice for past crimes, I replied, but also mercy, in honor of the service your order once provided. The ground shook again, but this time it wasn't an explosion. The castle was reshaping itself, secret chambers opening, hidden knowledge becoming accessible. It won't be easy, Lady Helena warned. People fear change, and this is more change than most can comprehend. Which is why they'll need us, I said. All of us. To help them understand, to guide them through the transition, to protect them from those who would abuse this new power. I could feel the crown's energy spreading, connecting with others across the country, those with the potential to become new guardians. The Blackwoods were never meant to stand alone. There will be challenges, I continued. Conflicts between the old ways and the new, those who see magic as a tool for personal gain, the struggle to blend ancient power with modern governance. And the wider world? Lady Margaret asked. What happens when other nations learn of this? We'll face that together, I replied, as we always have. Britain has stood as a beacon before. It will do so again, a bridge between the ancient and the modern, the magical and the mundane. I waved my hand again, and the chamber's walls became a window to London. Big Ben chimed, its sound deeper and more resonant than ever before, as if awakening from a long slumber. The Thames glowed with newfound energy, and the Houses of Parliament shimmered with old enchantments brought to life. Our first task, I said, is to address the nation, to offer truth, hope, and a path forward. As we prepared to leave the hidden chambers, to step into a world forever changed, I felt the weight of the crown, not as a burden, but as a reminder of the delicate balance between power and responsibility, between progress and preservation, between the magic of the past and the potential of the future. Lady Helena squeezed my arm. Your grandfather would be proud, she said softly. But he'd also remind you that the hardest part is yet to come. I finished. The true test of a guardian isn't in the grand moments of revelation, but in the daily choice to serve, to protect, to guide. As we ascended towards a new dawn, I carried with me the wisdom of my ancestors, the power of the old magic, and the profound understanding that the greatest adventures often begin with the turning of a hidden key. The keeper's secret was no longer a secret, but in its revelation lay the seeds of a new legend, one that would be written not just by me, but by every citizen of a reawakened Britain. The sun rose over Windsor Castle, its light blending with the shimmering magic that now danced openly across the land. A new day had dawned, and with it, a new age of guardianship began.